Hi, it's Sam here from samplelibraryreview.com, and today we're looking at the latest from Westwood Instruments, who pay homage to the modern Western and Americana with their most ambitious release to date in the shape of Novella Blackwater. With an inspiring chamber string ensemble at its core, the library opens out to reveal a wide vista of guitars, trumpet, piano, percussion and plenty more. Blackwater is a toolkit of brave ambition and vast scope that is not just perfect for the intended genre, but also boasts a wide appeal for more general scoring and songwriting. This is the second Novella toolkit from Westwood Instruments, following on from the contemporary cinematic and folk-tinged origins last year. By contrast, Blackwater certainly has a more genre-focused approach, yet it never gets too niche. It shares the same recording space as Origins, the Nave Studios, which means we have a varied blend of cinematic lushness and intimate detail. Superbly curated strings lead the charge here, backed up by a large posse of solo instruments. Each of the 15 patches showcase a range of articulations from bread and butter styles to experimental and unusual techniques. The engine is as impressive as the samples and ensures playability is at the heart of the library, with innovative dynamics features, tempo sync rhythms, multiple attack options and timbre shifting textures. Novella Blackwater is a 32.6GB download via Pulse. It's activated in native access. There are 15 patches, each with numerous articulations. You get 5 mics and 1 production ready mix. It works in the free contact player 6.6.1 or higher, and it's fully NKS compatible. There's a lot going on here, it's really deep, so I'll take you through each instrument, but I won't play every articulation, otherwise this review might become feature length. First up, we've got the Fairview Ensemble. This is a 7-3-3-2 chamber string band, and it's the biggest Westwood have sampled to date. It's a full section, and it's designed as a sketching tool, but honestly, it's actually very powerful as something that will make it all the way to a finished cue. It's got this awesome feature I've not previously come across, where the mod wheel dynamic swell can be automatically triggered at a choice of 3 tempo sync speeds. This enables two-handed playing, whilst also getting the emotional power of fading between dynamic layers. There's loads of detail and emotional heft in those strings. The motion length is default, but it's easy to switch in your typical mod wheel too. It's definitely really widescreen, but also a little gritty, especially with those more textual articulations. I love the way they're named quite poetically, and also the symbols, how they reflect the sound so well. It's more accessible for less classically aware and ties in with the library theme. Love those hairpins as well, really useful to write with. Some really lyrical legatos next, which lend themselves well to sweeping melodies, reflecting a wide open vista of the American plains. Legato speeds can be varied to accommodate slow or fast lines. We've got the violins and the viola separate, with the cellos and the double bass in octaves. That tone is just spot on for this genre. It's raw and romantic. A key switch triggers a hard Mercato attack, which is nice, though I feel this could be better done via velocity. It just feels more instinctive that way, to me at least. The whole ensemble is also broken down into high and low strings. On the high ones, check out the timbre fade on certain articulations, which crossfades between a fluttering kind of flautando-y type of sound to a more caustic sul pont that seems to be infused with harmonic wisps. very beautiful with a very emotive feel. The only downside being that at least currently we can't assign the MIDI CC to the timbre fader. Those wonderfully naturalistic drifting tremolos also use the same timbre blend. All the trems in Blackwater, I should mention, will sync to tempo, but include the original BPM in the name, so pick the one closest. You can go about 15 BPM either side and it still sounds pretty convincing. The low strings match the articulations of the highs, and I'll now play some of those that I missed out on the highs. Listen out for some examples that also isolate the mics. I'll turn the reverb off for these. Such a wide blend of both textural and super useful timed articulations there. Plus you've got the regular longs too, of course. The baked-in mix mic I really like, and it works great with the default vintage reverb. But as you can hear, there's quite some variance possible with the separate mics recorded in the beautiful Nave Studios. Now this next one, Deadwood, is one of the highlights of the library. It's a vintage solo violin, and it's strung with gut strings for a very visceral, raw sound. Played in a free-flowing fiddle style, and it's very evocative of Americana styles. The two-note drawn articulations really tap into that. The legato, albeit not particularly nimble, excels at wistful lines with a tender edge to the timbre. The gut violin also features a very special mic, which will also solo in this example. Those bluegrass bends at the start of the phrases are amazing. There's another key switch for a Mikado attack too, alongside the normal one, so we've got 3 for the gut violin. It's a lovely, often plaintive legato, and that mono copperphone mic is ideal for either layering in for some characterful mid-range edge or to emulate an old recording with its limited frequency response and some natural compression. Next up is the Morgan Harmonium, with the range extended, making it far more versatile for composers. I like how we have samples of the mechanical noises of the keys and the bellow, plus also having control of the volume of them. Some really interesting, more unconventional playing methods there too. Now whilst we're on this patch, let's have a quick tour of the interface. Not every instrument will have all the options available that you're going to see here, but the harmonium does seem to have the full complement available. Across the top we've got all your articulations, and shift clicking them will play more than one at the same time. The little box here will bring up controls that are specific to that articulation. We've got attack and release, controls for dynamics, tightness, level, and for any articulations that have it, round robin controls. Below that we've got expression and dynamics. We've got a section here which will be different depending on what instrument you've got loaded up. Here we've got the mechanical noise control and the range. This is also duplicated on the trumpets. In the mic section we've got a lovely baked-in mix, but we also have separates available too. We've got stereo close, we've got stereo XY room, we've got a mono copperphone. Other instruments also feature gallery mics, which are set right at the back of the nave for some real ambience, and also some drum overhead mics. You've got a fader for each one, solo and mute, and using these icons you can both save and load your favourite mic setups. The last thing on the front panel is the reverb. There's plenty of options here for springs, plates, rooms, and more affected reverbs. On the effects page, we've got loads of different things going on for the harmonium. Other instruments have a bit less than this, but this has got them all. We've got stereo width control here, chorus, speaker cab, etc. The delay here is really quite deep, and we've got some lovely presets to get you started, which will dial in some custom settings. The reverb is just replicated from the front page. At the top here is a trans-pitch control, which is really useful. This will move the samples down so they play back a little bit slower, but then pitch them back up so they're still in tune. And this way we can access a different kind of tonality, which is often a little bit darker and more moody. On the settings page, we can decide if we want the key switches on or off. And if you've got them on, we can decide exactly where we want to position them. The auto purge mics here will mean that if it's on, you will be able to lower the fader of that mic, and at the very bottom it will actually unload that sample from RAM, which is quite handy if you need to save some resources. We've got some controls here for velocity sensitivity as well, and again some more purging options here for articulations. Finally, in the info panel is this lovely credit screen, which gives you a bit more information about everyone that was involved in the recording of the library. Back to our playthrough, and Blackwater is pretty deep on guitars as well as strings, and there's nods to both classic and modern Western soundtracks here. The first of them is named Outlaw. It's to Dane electro through a Fender Reverb tube amp, and it'll cover all your twangy requirements. There's some cracking growly chords on this one in a few different guises, with major, minor, suspended and power chord varieties on offer. The fragile, slightly uneven coin tremolo is great for adding a sense of suspense and a gritty layer to your writing. The interval version is really unique as well. I can't actually recall hearing them in a library before. Rails is a more intimate electric guitar offering with a cleaner Telecaster recorded in a smaller space, which lends this patch more to atmospheric playing. There's loads of mutes, slides and harmonics, plus some lovely chordal work. Some of these are reversed too, and I found it really interesting to combine the reverses with other patches. You hold down Shift to select more than one articulation to do this. Some lovely sounds there that somehow managed to sound both vintage but also thoroughly modern. Now, not to be outdone, the acoustic six-string is also well represented. Flat top is a very expensive vintage Gibson with a warm and incredibly well-balanced sound. We've got some lovely sustains, mutes, drones and tremolos, but perhaps the standout here are the range of strumming rhythms at different tempos and with a range of chords. That is quite possibly the most realistic strummed acoustic samples I've heard. The way each phrase combines with the next is so seamless, and the playing has a really human touch. It's super vibey and not quantized. By contrast, the nylon guitar, nicknamed Nomad, is more chilled and includes more fingerpicking in the rhythms. It's really cool on this one to have chords and single notes in the same articulation. The last examples there were the wends. Now apparently to wend is to go in a specified direction, but slowly or in an indirect route. Every day is a school day when you're reviewing sample libraries, it appears. In this context, it's pretty much just noodling around, often but not always on a single note. It reminds me a little bit of the Untamed series. These articulations can make really inventive, pointillistic textures. The juniper mandala is a very unique sound, being an octave mandolin, but it's tuned up to a mandola, so it's somewhat of a hybrid of both, with pingy brightness but also a decent amount of body. Again, we see the influence of the Untamed series with those tremolo storms that add stacked layers. Some fantastic rhythms there, really clear and bright due to using their pick. Onto the Herald solo trumpet now, and it's an interesting blend of workhorse shorts and swells and classic Western type motifs, plus some really experimental textures which utilise an extended range to span nearly 5 octaves. Those motifs are really fun, but they will need a specific context to be of much use. It's good to have them though, in case you need that spaghetti western thing. They could have gone the whole hog, I guess, and included whip cracks and whistling, but it might have just made it a little bit too pastiche. We get another quite genre-specific instrument in the shape of the Bronson harmonica next. The name here harks back to Once Upon a Time in the West and Morricone brilliance. You hardly ever hear these sampled, and Westwood did a really cracking job on this one. The first articulation here uses velocity to switch from a moody attack to a wild and lonesome bend. Showed a bit more of the mic isolations there. I really love that lo-fi copperphone, very much like early radio transmissions. Moving on, the upright piano is another staple of the Wild West, but this one is named Hickory, as it eschews the tax for a hickory drumstick whacking the strings. The result is something that nods to the saloon piano, but is a bit more flexible and contemporary. You can also get a nice tonal variance by selecting if the soundboard is removed or not. There's huge stylistic possibilities there, all the way from cheesy honky-tonk to atmospheric reverse meanderings. Bear in mind, I've not even added any of the various effects in the engine either, so it could go even more out there with tape delays and hazy reverbs. Right, so on to the final instrument, which is Oilfield, and this one is more of a collection of instruments. We've got a rusty oil drum, which gets deep sampled for some distinctive metallic hits, and alongside that is a military snare, a snare with a tambourine ring, toms, hand drums, cymbal stacks, jaw harps, and a bunch of other percussion. There's a wealth of round robins and dynamic layers on offer, which gives plenty of life to these samples. I'll play through them one by one, and then play them all as an ensemble. The oil drum is really characterful. I'm loving that snare, especially with some great rolls and drags. Note that these can be tuned up and down, which I always appreciate for drums and percussion, and we also have a bonus overhead mic for this patch. I would though love to see an update with these in individual articulations. Whilst this combo patch is good, you don't really know what you're playing until you hit a key, and also if we had them separated out, they could be mapped for two-handed playing maybe. To To be honest, the wonderful branding of this library both intrigued me immensely but also made me question if it'd be useful for me. On the face of it, it might appear to be a niche product for only scoring modern westerns. Now it does indeed tick that box with aplomb. It is arguably the world's leading scoring product for contemporary Americana. However, Blackwater is so cleverly designed that it can be far more also. A good proportion of the content here, like the amazing strings and guitars, is simply superb for all sorts of modern scoring and also excellent for songwriting. A prime example of this is how they did not go fully down the tap piano route, which could be a little cliched, and instead gave us drumsticks on the strings for something similar, yet new and displaying greater flexibility. Similarly, the mandolin is not your typical mandolin sound at all. Certainly there are some instruments here, like the trumpet and harmonica, that do feature clear Western soundtrack trademarks, but even those include more unusual articulations, which extend the end use beyond that particular genre. I think the toolkit approach here really helps to make each component sit nicely with each other with minimal fuss, and the quality throughout, from the recordings to the beautifully designed interface, is at the highest level. Westwood Instruments should be congratulated for a pioneering approach here that has achieved something really unique with relatively small disk space requirements and at an attractive price point. The strings alone are worthy of the special Novella loyalty intro pricing if you ask me. Blackwater is really deep, there's so much on offer, and many patches could stand alone as small individual libraries of their own. Above all, it has a timeless feel with an adventurous spirit that simply makes it inspiring and exciting to play. For me, Blackwater is one of the best libraries of the entire year. I hope you enjoyed that review of Westwood Instruments' Novella Blackwater. Please like, share and subscribe. And let us know below in the comments what you thought about this release. Be sure to visit samplelibraryreview.com for all the latest reviews and the weekly deal compressor.